Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the From There to Here podcast. And I'm your host, Lawrence Temple. I am so pleased today. I have Principal Kalisha Sykes. She is our special guest today. I have the privilege of knowing her once upon a time. She was my student in the eighth grade, and I'm so pleased through the internet, to somewhat keep up with things she's doing. And she's going to talk to us today just about her path, her journey, education, and just things that come up. So, Ms. Sackey, how are you?
Oh, well, a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invite, Mr. Temple.
Absolutely. I'm excited about it. Well, I told you there's one question that I tell you in advance. We just talked about that. What would be your elevator speech? And for those who don't know, if you stepped on an elevator, you're only on there with other people for a few seconds. And in the quick conversation, you had to say who you were or what you're about in just a few seconds. What would you say?
I would say I am Kalisha Sykes, and I'm all about living my life and enjoying my life. I just think that in everything we do, we just got to make sure that we take the time to stop also, because I enjoy my life even with the job that I do, but also I enjoy my personal life as well. And one thing my teachers will tell you is that I always make sure that I take care of home, I take care of me, and I take care of those around me so that we can all enjoy life.
That's good, guys, because you're one of the few. I've had a lot of professional people on the show, which I'm thankful for. You're the first one who led off with the word enjoy. I think that's heavy. Now, did you have life experiences that kind of brought you to that, or was that just always your attitude?
That's always my attitude because my mom always told me that we don't work just to pay bills. So we just got to make sure that we are living
Mm,
also because we work so hard and then we wait till retirement where we're not able to do it as much as we can. So we got to make sure we stop and enjoy the moment as we live and as we work right now.
wow, that my dad's a teacher. Was a teacher. He's in his 90s. He's been retired by now, maybe as long as he worked. And a lot of his coworkers were waiting for retirement, and they didn't enjoy themselves, waiting for one day, and they didn't live very long in their retirement days. So I get the message of
Right.
what you're saying. Powerful.
Mhm. And I just want them to enjoy being here because they'll do the most for you when they enjoy being here, even at the
Okay.
school.
And I'm going to talk to you in a bit about kind of your philosophy about leading people, whether you're leading students or teachers or etc. Well, how did you come to education? When you were 3 years old, did you say, when I grow up, I want to be a principal? Was it that direct, or what was your path?
It actually was, Mr. Temple. I don't know if you recall, but it was when I was in the eighth grade at Holly Hill Middle School. And I think her name was
Wow.
Miss Pan, my science teacher.
Yes.
We had a day where you all picked four people to be the teacher for the day. And I was picked to
Wow.
be the science teacher. Math was always my thing, but I did well in science too. I can't remember what the science subject, but I remember balancing equations, so I had some chemistry in there because
Yeah.
balancing equations is about math. Also, I always did well in her class also, so I was picked to be the teacher in science in the eighth grade. And from that moment, I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I knew I wanted to be a math teacher. That's what it started in eighth grade.
Wow. I remember that day. I remember that project with the kids. That is powerful. Wow. I'm going to pass this on to my teacher friends so we know that the things we do matter down the road. That is amazing. Wow.
It was that day.
Now, when you let's move to high school. When you were in high school, were you involved in clubs, sports, extracurricular, or working? What was your high school world like?
So I've always done well in school, thankfully. So I did well academically. And when I got to high school, I was in flag corps and I also did softball. I was in National Honor Society. There was another program I was in, I can't remember the name of that one, Kiwanis or something like that. And then I also did basketball for a little bit. And then I did TV production and I really like TV production. And that's what I was involved with. But I was always kind of quiet, laid back type of person. So I really wasn't that outgoing. I never have to be front and center. I don't have to be front and center now, but my job makes me be front and center. But I've always been laid back. But I have always been involved in extracurricular activities.
I did TV production at Mainland High School. Mr. Ratner was our teacher. I loved it. I was TV was going to be my major, and then I changed down the road. Can you talk to the because who knows who our audience is? Could you express the importance of getting your children involved in extracurriculars and things like that, maybe to a parent who didn't do that and they don't really know the big deal about it? Could you talk about how it benefits kids or benefited you?
First off, it's something they enjoy. They get to have fun because extracurricular activities are activities they pick to do. So they usually pick something that they want to do. Then you have that connection piece because you're connected to other people, teachers, as well as scholars, other students. And then you also have that accountability also. I think about our athletes in the school. If we see any of them doing anything wrong, all we have to do is say, I'm going to tell your coach. And they will instantly straighten up before, they're more afraid of their coaches than they are their parents. So that accountability piece is also good. And it just keeps them out of trouble. It gives them something to do. They're always busy with that extracurricular activity. So less likely for them to get into trouble.
I still remember. I don't know if she was at. Did you went to Mainland High School? Is that right?
Yes.
And there was a. I'm only a little older than you, but anyway, there was a teacher, Miss Barnes, who taught math, and she was over the Key Club, like the volunteer club. And that's kind of the first connection that I made as far as a campus group beside the band. And I just remember the impact that had on me, and that led me to other things too. So I definitely remember the impact of those adults and my band director and all the rest. So I understand what you're talking about. And now you went to Florida State University, correct?
Yes, go knows.
Yes, ma'am. Go. I'm a Gator, but because I respect you so much, I'm gonna say a gold nose on your behalf. Um, why did you end up at that school? Why not anywhere else? How did it become Florida State?
So I actually had two choices. I had Miami and I had University of Miami and I had Florida State. Why I chose those two schools, I honestly don't remember. It might have been because they were kind of in their prime during that time, just seeing them more. But I really don't know why I chose those two. Well, my dad told me, no, you're not going down to Miami. so,
Yeah,
so
right.
that was eliminated immediately. And then I just applied to Florida State University, and that's the only college I applied to. So thankfully, I got in.
Oh wow. Okay. We always tell people to apply multiple
I
places,
know, right?
right? Okay. Well, now you mentioned your dad. Could you talk about your parents? What? Because I don't know anything about your background or anything like that. How did they influence your life? What do you see in yourself now that came from them? Anything about them you want to share?
My both of my parents were active in my life. When I got to fifth grade, they actually divorced. However, even though they were separated, we were still. I would always. My dad was still there. He just wasn't physically in the house, so he was still there. And then he moved to Alabama. But every summer he would come and get me and my brother, and we would go and spend the summers with him. So even though he wasn't in the home, he was still well connected to us. So I had both parents growing up. But what I recall the most is my mom during the summer when they were together. This is when I was young, elementary. She would always go get those books and make me do the books to get me prepared for the next school year. We just talked about this the other day also.
Wow.
She would get the books so that I had some work to do over the summer to get me prepared for the next grade level. And what I remember most about was I remember doing the books, but what I remember most is enjoying the math books and not the reading books so
Wow.
much. That's what I do remember, but she made me do those books every summer. I remember really enjoying the math.
Now that's foreign to me because I love to read too, and my parents would encourage me and with encyclopedias and all that kind of stuff. I I just didn't like math. The words, yes, math, not so much. But I'm over it now. I think. Um, can can you talk for a moment about the importance of parents providing reading opportunities for their kids, particularly at the younger ages?
Well, it definitely creates some deficits. And believe it or not, even though I've always done well, it's just because I always do my work. But because I gear more towards the math, reading was not my strongest area. And I even remember being in the sixth grade with Miss Friel back at Holly Hill Elementary. When I got to her class, my fifth grade teacher, his name was Mr. Well, and she used to say, why were you in Mr. Webb's class? Why were you in Mr. Webb's class? At that point, I didn't know what she meant, but later on, I realized there was some type of deficiency I had that they placed me in Mr. Webb's class.
Wow.
And it was because of my reading levels. But once I got to her class, she was like, this is what your scores say, but this is not how you perform in a classroom. So that is the importance, you making sure, because I didn't do as well in reading, even though my mom gave me those books.
Mm-hmm.
You will develop some deficiencies. Luckily, I was able to overcome them. Even to this day, if I take an assessment, I'm going to blow the math out of the water. My reading is not going to be as strong, but because it always creates that balance where I'm still able to give a good score. But I need to do better myself with my own young son because he loves math like me and not reading so much. And once again, he's going down my same pathway where he's not scoring as well in reading. But it's important because you will see those deficits that's going to continue to give that scholar that struggle, or that student that struggle. We use scholar all the time here. Give that scholar that struggle. And it's just something that you really don't want for your child. They can't overcome it, but it's better if you go ahead and set that foundation at the beginning.
That's important that you mentioned that you, as a person who's successful in the world of education, principals, all that kind of stuff, one day you'll be governor of Georgia. We'll talk about it later. But even though you have all this success in the academic world, you had your own deficits to deal with. I think it's important for people to hear that because I think they assume a person is always super together in everything from birth. And it's good for them to hear that you had some things to work through.
I did, but I still performed well in classrooms. This wasn't my test scores.
Okay. Now, so in your teaching journey, have you taught elementary or middle or high? What's been your path as a teacher before the administration part of it?
All high school. That's the only level I know. I have not been at any other level. I actually taught 3 years back at home at New Smyrna Beach High School. And then I moved up here to Georgia, started teaching at Stevenson High School. So I started teaching here in 2003. Taught high school math for 14 years before I got promoted.
Now, I didn't know that. Was the administration path something that you had in mind early on, or did you have to get, how did that come about?
Not at all. Believe it or not, it always kind of just falls in my lap. So when it was time for me, actually I was content teaching math in my classroom, and my principal came to me and asked me if I would be his academic coach. And I remember being in the same office, and I told him, I don't know about that, Mr. Jones. I said, I need to think about that. And you would think that somebody who your principal's asking you to come out of the classroom or promotion. And I told him I had to think about that. And one of the reasons is because academic coaches used to be hired by our county and placed at schools. And then they made the transition to where the principal was able to hire them. And so when my principal was able to hire them, I saw him also demote them back into the classroom. And so I remember telling him, I don't know, because that job doesn't seem too stable, is what I told him.
Okay.
And so when I left out of his office, I went to talk to my assistant principal, who I had a strong relationship with. And I said, Mr. Jones just asked me to be his academic coach. She said, I know, and you're going to accept it. Is what she told me. And so I accepted it. So that's how I initially got out of the classroom. And I was an academic coach for only a year and a half. And I started applying for an assistant principal job. And believe it or not, it wasn't because I was ready. It was actually because of finances. My dad, so academic coach position was still paying you at teacher's pay.
Okay.
But my dad had just had a stroke when I was an academic coach. But he had a stroke right as I moved out of my house. And he was supposed to be moving into my home. Okay. So now I'm stuck with having to pay 2 house notes. And so I just started struggling financially with that because he was supposed to move into my home. He had a stroke. And I was like, I need more money. Applied for an assistant principal, applied for several, got my first interview and got the job. Wow. So that's how that happened. And then in 2018, I got hired at a charter school. So I left Stevenson for 2.5 years.
Okay.
My charter school, we served at-risk scholars, but unfortunately our charter wasn't written correctly and we were still expected to perform like a traditional school. So we really couldn't get the scores that we were supposed to get serving at-risk scholars. We would get all the scholars that the traditional schools didn't want. So they would send them over to us, but we couldn't get the scores because they were still comparing us to traditional. So they actually closed our school. So for the first time in 18 years, I did not have a job. Because when I got that job at the charter school, even though it was in DeKalb, I worked for DeKalb County Schools. It was a DeKalb County charter school, but charter schools operate as their own entity. So I had to resign from here when I got employed over there.
Okay.
And it just so happened that when the school closed, the assistant principal job opened up back here at Stevenson High School. And Mr. Jones allowed me to come back. And he told me you should have never left anyway. And
I
so, as you know, he
mm-hmm.
retired this past May. Well, he told us in May. And when he told us, my heart dropped. I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do next? And while I was content being an assistant principal, I knew I had to apply for this just because it would always been a what if. And I applied and I got it. So it was no aspiration to be, just kind of life just happened.
I always think I told you that I always have on the little title slide of this episode the my guest picture and their name and like their title, like principal, or whatever. And then I always have like a little subtitle. I think the subtitle for yours is going to be meant to be, because it seemed like so many things you kind of almost stumbled into and they were part of your story.
Yes. Yep. No aspirations to do it all.
Um, can you tell me what are, it's probably more than one, some of the things you enjoy the most in your education life, whether it was as a teacher, coach, administrator, principal? What are some of the things that you are most excited about in your roles?
Mm-hmm. I love seeing my scholars happy, and I love seeing my teachers happy. Today was our first day back from the winter break. We returned yesterday, but the scholars returned today. And just, hey, Dr. Sackey, hey, and give me hugs and just, glad to see me back. And then also talking about the grades I passed, I did this, May is coming, just the excitement that I see from them. Also, December 15th was our last day before the break, and receiving all the gifts and the love and the appreciation from my teachers with this being my first year. And just knowing that they are really, I've changed for them, that I've changed our culture, I've changed our morale. One of our substitutes, she used to be a teacher here, she's retired, but she still subs for us. She stopped me on Friday and she said, you're a good principal. She said, I have not seen the staff happy in so long like this. And she said, you're doing a really good job. And then
Mm.
also just yesterday, my social worker was in here talking to me. He said, let me go ahead and give your summary for your first semester. he said, you're doing a good job. He said, everybody over here is just saying how things are just so much different for the better. And everybody's talking about you, even at the district level, about the changes that are being made at Stevenson High School. So it's just good to know that I'm making an impact already in this short time, and that they are feeling appreciated. So just seeing, like I said, seeing them happy and seeing my scholars happy. Of course, you got a few people here and there, but overall,
Of course.
Things are going really well, and that's what makes me happy. Makes me enjoy coming to this building every day.
And I'm sorry, I've been saying Miss Sackey. I forgot you're Dr. Sackey, so I
Oh, that's
apologize for that. I
fine.
know you're not been on that, but I don't want to shortchange what you've done. Um, could you talk about then, because you wear so many hats as your parent, teacher, administrative leader. I want to talk about the leadership part. What would be your tips, I guess, to someone who's coming into a school, a business, or whatever as the leader, and they want to change culture? Because you used the word culture several times. What are some things that you consciously did or do to affect or improve the culture of your school?
So, I've been here for a while. I started in 2003, like I said before, and then I left here in 2015 and came back in 2018. So I've been here through all the roles. So I have a pretty good relationship with all the teachers who've been here with me. I've been side by side with them as a teacher, but I thought I knew our culture, but I didn't, because what I really found out during my interview process to become principal is that you are still excluded. They now, even though I was a teacher right along with them, I'm now their administrator. So I'm still left out of the loop when they want to vent and when they want to complain about administration. I really don't hear that side. I hear some of it, I don't hear it all. So when I got into my interview, I had to go through 4 rounds to become principal. When I was on the focus panel with the community, one of the questions asked about one of the questions said something along the lines of, you have a low morale in the building. And I'm like, what? I know we had some issues, but I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
say low. So that kind of took me by surprise. So after I got that interview, I called 3 teachers that I know are very vocal and won't be afraid to speak up and say what's on their mind. And they told me what their concerns were. And once they told me what they were, I listened and I had to address it.
Okay.
And so I address it, communication. So just making sure I communicate and I mean, I'm a pretty transparent person anyway, but I communicate, I talk, and I'm transparent to them. The appreciation, they didn't feel appreciated. So I made sure I show appreciation through different things we do all the time. And then also the safety, security concern, behavior
Mm-hmm.
has been an issue. We've had a lot of fights last school year, and they just felt like our scholars were kind of taking over and we weren't really responding. So, I mean, my demeanor anyway, I don't, you can't, when I was in the classroom, you can't run my classroom, so you're definitely not going to run my school.
Okay.
So you're going to get out of this hallway and you're going to get in the classroom. And I'm just on the scholars. I show them love also, but they already know also they need to get in the classroom and sit down and behave. So I've changed that part of it also. That December 15th, the last day, but like I told you also before our break, where
Mm-hmm.
some of our scholars want to try to be in the hallway a little too much. I have you can see it behind me, I have a rolling desk. I was out there all day, all day, because this is the last day of school, but you're still going to be in class. You have a
Okay.
pass, okay, go back to class. If
Okay.
they didn't have a pass, I called the teacher. I had my secretary call the teacher, let them know I sent them back because they didn't have a pass. But I was just on them, and the teachers love all of that.
Yeah. As a teacher, yes, we do. All the things you're hitting are the things we absolutely love.
So
100%.
yes, I just listened to them. I heard what they said, and I made sure to address all of
Now,
it.
what are the demographics of your school? High income, middle income, high minority, low minority? What on paper on a spreadsheet? What does your school look like?
So we are predominantly Black. I don't know if you know much about the DeKalb County, but it's a predominantly Black area. So we're predominantly Black. And when you talk amongst colleagues, even though they'll let you know there's a north side and a south side to DeKalb County.
Okay.
And the north side has your predominantly white schools, but even though DeKalb is Black, they'll have majority. I don't want to even say predominantly white, but they have more white scholars up there than they do the southern schools. So we are part of the southern part of DeKalb County. However, we're known as the school that has one of my principals told me we weren't invited because Stevenson, y'all kind of bougie over there.
Oh, I knew you were gonna say that.
So Stevenson has a reputation. We're a Black school, but we have a higher income with the Black scholars. But I
Okay.
can tell you though, our population has changed. It's not like it used to be. But when you come to Stevenson High School, just a subdivision over, has a golf community within the subdivision. So we do have our parents do have high incomes, but we do have some. We
Okay.
are a Title I school still,
Oh
but we
wow.
are
Okay.
known as a Black school that have higher income.
Gotcha.
And
But for those who aren't in the school world, what does it mean to be a Title I school?
so you have at least, I think it's 67% of your scholars are on free and reduced lunch.
Okay. Got that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as a person, I realized as a school person myself, most people's kids are grown and they don't work with kids, so they're not in touch with kids, teenagers. What are some of the things you feel teenagers need these days? I don't know if and it may not be any different from the past, but what are the needs? And I mean academically, socially, whatever. What is it that are let's say the high school age kid? What do they need?
Mm-hmm. So when I'm not gonna say all parents, but a lot of parents think that once they get to high school, okay, I can back off, you're on your own now. And that's the biggest mistake right there,
Wow.
because now once you get into ninth grade, this is where your credits really count. We can't just promote you based on we want to promote you. You have to have the credits to go on to the next grade level. So you still have to be a parent. You still have to have that guidance. You still have to check their progress reports. You still have to contact parents. You still have to be on them just like you were on them when they were in elementary school.
Okay.
You can't leave it up to them and say, I got my diploma. You still have to be on them.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing when it comes to academics. we had that whole social emotional thing. Like I told you, just a number of fights. They don't want to be disrespected.
Yeah.
The social media now, that part is playing a big role in a lot of the issues, especially with our young ladies. Um, we need programs now to help them with that social emotional part. And that's something I was talking to my social worker about yesterday. We're trying to get something up
Mm.
and going to mentor those kids when it comes to that aspect of it also. And then also just being there and showing, because I have a good life. I didn't struggle, but a lot of
Okay.
these scholars struggle, and that parent piece is missing from their lives. Um, One of my scholars now, he's having a hard home life with his parents, and so he's with his grandmother. But he's made the decision to go to one of our schools called Elizabeth Andrews, which is just give him a better chance. It's a different, it's not a traditional high school, but it's still a
Okay.
Catholic school. So just another alternative. And he came up and gave me a hug today and said he's going to miss me. He's going to Elizabeth Andrews now. But he gave me that hug because I check on him, I talk to him. And that's something when I told you I went to that charter school, that at-risk school, with the temple, that just changed my whole mindset. I've never
Really.
seen kids struggle so much in life. So I make sure that um, I'm reaching out to them. I touched them, and one of the parents said that she was like, "I see when you interact." She said, "You actually stop, you'll touch them, you look directly in their eyes, and you let them know you care when you're talking to them." And I was just like, maybe that's the mother in me, but also I know that it comes from being at Destiny where I see them struggle and they just want to see somebody that cares for them. And my counselors like to say that the bad boys like me. And they do. It's just because I just talk to them and I get to know them and I encourage them to do right. I fuss too, because you're gonna be inside this classroom, you're gonna be out my hallway. But I'm
Right.
gonna, because I need you to pass these classes. Where are we now? You have such and such credits. Come on now. I'm just on them and I need you to do well. I'm going to check your grade. So when I see you next time, you better have an A or you better have a B. And so, I'm just I'm caring. I'm trying to make sure that I want to see the best them.
You said something that struck a chord with me. I went to breakfast with a former a teacher I worked with and one of our students who's now an adult. And I told him at the beginning of my teaching career, I taught at the Juvenile Detention Center, which I didn't even know had uh, classes or whatever. And, it was all kids who were there because they had gotten some kind of trouble from mild things to major things. And I hated it. But I realized after a couple of weeks, it was the thing I needed because, like you, I had a good life. Most of my friends were not the kids who got in trouble, whatever. So me being around these kids who are all in trouble, I'm ashamed now. But at the time, I realized I was judging these kids. I was looking down on them. And then when I got to talk with them and stuff, either just listening to them talk or talking with them, I felt so guilty because I realized I'm judging these kids based on my almost privileged background.
Yeah.
What if my background had been like theirs? I would have been doing the same stuff maybe. So uh, it helped shape my approach to kids later on. So I get what you're talking about. And I'm glad I went through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, if a young, I know we're in Florida. I assume it's the same in Georgia that there is a teaching shortage all over the country. Um, if there's a young person, I don't know, high school age or whatever, someone who's considering the teaching profession, what kind of advice would you give them as far as what kind of person is cut out for a teacher or anything you would talk about along those lines?
Well, the first thing they have to bring is their patience. You have to have patience. You have to have patience because it's so easy to quit. It's so easy to get upset. And you just have to have patience because these kids, these scholars will make you lose your job if you don't have that patience. So that's the first thing. Um, Teaching is not just about teaching. We have to deal with so many other things also.
Mm,
We would love to be able to just come in here and teach, but you have to deal with everything else that comes with teaching as well. Um, you can't be weak, and I wouldn't say it like that. I would find a better way to say it, but you have to let your scholars know who's the boss.
okay.
You have to let them know who's the boss because once you give up that in your classroom, once you don't have that classroom management, it's just going to be hard. It's
Okay.
going to be hard.
Okay.
I think those are the things I would say at the beginning. And if you can come in with those, I think everything else will fall into place.
You sound like a veteran. Like you know it, like you've been through some things and you still care, but you
Mhm.
know who and what you're dealing with. That's what you sound like.
I mean, this is year 24.
Well, yeah, good. Yeah, so you should know some things by now. That's true.
And I
Um,
just, I, ju- I see the teachers that have given up, and I see that those are the things that they have lacked. And I see even some of my teachers and staff now that don't have the patience. I think about my security person who is in here who has to break up the issues. And I had to tell him, don't make them lose your job. You want to get so upset. They're not necessarily angry with you, they're angry at the situation. So when
hmm
you're trying to break them up or trying to get them to stop doing something, they're going to cuss and they're going to fuss. But just know that in that moment, it might seem like it's directed at you, but they're angry from the situation and you're removing them from a situation where they're trying to get at another person. But at the end of the day, they'll be back in school and you'll be at the county office in trouble about to lose your job. So you
mm,
have to have that patience. You just have to. They're going to test you. They're teenagers. They're going to test you, and they're as big as us also. So I mean, that's the first thing I say: patience, because they are going to make you mad. And then the
yeah,
teacher's gonna make you mad. Another teacher's gonna make you mad. Somebody's gonna make you mad.
I've had to counsel grown men who wanted to, punch a teenager as Mr. Such and Such. Yes, he's everything you're saying, but you can't do that. So I understand. Um, in the few minutes I have left, this is perfect timing. I want to come back to something else you mentioned. Our girls. I noticed I dealt with discipline a lot when I was an administrator, and maybe my early teaching days, boys were who you were concerned with as far as fighting and all that. But in these last 10 or more years, by far, girls have
Yeah.
become the aggressors, the ones you have to watch out for fights and all that. Do you have any thoughts about why that is and what particularly can be done about that? And I know you mentioned some things in general, but I mean maybe even more pointed girl wise. What's the issue with the girls?
We like to run our mouth. We like to talk. We talk too much. We talk too much. And at that age, you're talking too much. You're putting your business on social media. Then you got the boy aspect of it also. And then once somebody says something you don't like, now you want to fight. So you're talking too much, and then you don't know how to handle the conflict, or you
Okay.
don't know how to resolve the conflict. You just think that okay, I won't be disrespected. I've said that before because that's the term they like to use. She's not gonna disrespect me about
Yeah.
what she said. So now you think I gotta go fight her to shut her up. So now you're trying to silence her. But it's that they talk, they talk, they talk, they talk. And then I even find when we do our investigations, most of the time it's not even the two girls, it's what their other friend has brought back to them or said to them. So it's all about what they say and it's all about what they type, but it's just they just talk too much and they say the wrong thing and they don't know how to handle and resolve the conflict. So we need to tell them, we need to show them and teach them how to resolve issues without fighting.
Got that.
You're going to get into it. I mean, it's just, they talk about it. They talk about Jesus. They're going to talk about you. That's just what
Yeah. That's a good quote. I like that.
happens.
I think I'm going to end it with that.